What is up, everyone? Welcome! It's been forever, and we're back! The NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, Pete Rodgers, and I am joined for the first time in a very, 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 very long time by my fellow nerds, the resident old man, Clark Barnes, and the working girl, Jordan Smith. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
We are so very excited to be back in football mode.
So very excited. I have an exact timeline. I can tell you, I have not recorded a podcast in 8 months, which feels like a very, very long time. And I know that because it's exactly how old the girls are, because that's when I stopped recording. And then now we're back at it. The season is ripe. The girls are sleeping through the night. It's football time.
It's exciting times. Everybody's 0-0, and only like 2 or 3 teams, like the Stinkadle, Stinkhawks, know that this year is just going to be terrible for them. So let's get pumped.
The utmost confidence in Seattle already. Clark just cutting ties with the team that is closest to him.
Someone got mad at me for suggesting they'd have just 2 wins this year.
I saw that.
That's fandom. Good for you. Like, I'm happy for that person. That's good.
That's your naivete is just well developed or well done. Excellent. Well, we are going to jump into the show, and because we love to do this every year, every offseason, we like to spice things up. We like to kind of bring something new, something fresh, something different. And so we've got a whole bunch of different segments that we're going to cycle throughout the year, and just to keep the shows lively and entertaining. This week, we have a couple of good things on the docket. We're going to do a love and a hate of the week. We're going to have a fact of the week, and then we're going to do a top 10 list talking about ADPs. So let us start with the McLovin Love of the Week. Clark, what did you love from this past week?
So we're seeing reports from training camp, and we're seeing live footage. One of my favorite things about this, I remember when I was young, football games were, not in the budget. It was very expensive. But what we did get to do was go to training camp a couple of times. And even though it was the Cowboys, and if you're from Houston, you have to hate the Dallas Cowboys, it was really cool to be able to go and see live NFL players doing NFL things. And you're seeing a lot of guys stay late and sign autographs. And, those are going to be cool memories that those kids have, for the rest of their lives. So I just love the accessibility of training camp, and that it gives people an opportunity who maybe can't afford to go to a games to still see those guys in person.
Yeah. I saw a video today of, it was a kid's birthday, and Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor were like signing autographs, and they heard it was the kid's birthday. And I don't know, the kid, I'm terrible at gauging child's ages. So he's maybe like 6, let's just say. Sure. And Nyheim Hines just like bends over the rail and just like picks him up. Like it was an example of like NFL players are just super strong, and you don't necessarily realize just how he just like effortlessly picked this kid up and was just like popped him down. They took a picture and popped him back. And I was like, oh, that's a beautiful moment. And also Nyheim Hines you're very strong, like every NFL player.
Yeah, I would especially have loved watching having inside the NFL or like the NFL training camp special, whatever they run for like 8 hours a day during the weekdays on NFL Network. And you can see in the background, like the Cowboys training camp, or like who else have they had on there pretty prominently? The Vegas Raiders have been pretty prominently on there. I know for a fact that going to Lambeau in their training camp is like a pretty special experience, because they have like the kids come and they take their bikes to Lambeau. You've probably seen this on Twitter and very heartwarming videos, and they're riding these little kids' bikes across the street to the practice field. And it's just like a really like, this is the time where the teams like pull the fans back in, which is very fun. And it seems like it's more about the fans right now than when we actually get into the season. So that's nice.
Do you know, Jordan, this year, are they handing out ayahuasca tea to all of the fans just to really kind of like get into the Green Bay spirit and culture, get ready for the season?
Yeah, actually, you have to make a deal with a shaman before you're allowed onto or near Ray Nitschke Field even.
Oh, wow. That's good. It's a good thing Aaron Rodgers got a jump start on that. Jordan, what did you love?
I'll butcher the quote.
Oh,
nah. No, well, it's I think Hunter S. Thompson said, I wouldn't recommend drugs or this lifestyle or whatever to anyone, but it's worked for me.
It does feel like Aaron Rodgers to a T. He's like, has his choices very prominent, and then is like, but I do my own thing. It's like, okay, good for you, I guess. We all shrug. Jordan, what did you love from this week?
So what I love from this week is basically, this sounds like maybe a very vague thing, or maybe it's just the product of my Twitter algorithm, but I actually love this year. It seems to be like the fantasy football community sort of evolving again. There seems to be like some through lines I tend to notice every single season. And this year it's like, we've had a couple years of training camp videos of Instagram workouts that we eat up. We love it. We love seeing people make impossible catches when they're wearing shorts and maybe just a helmet. So the fantasy community now is just like, well, this is great and all, but let's take a collective step back here. This is training camp. This is practice. Oh, he's running against a second squad guy there. Maybe this catch or this play isn't all that is cooped up or all that is built up to be. This I noticed predominantly on the Jordan Davis video that you saw him just bull rushing back a smaller center, and you had guys chiming in who are smart about offensive line play, and they're like, actually, this is a pretty good stance, and like the ball would have been gone by the time the center is like backing up. So just collectively, I think the fantasy community is once again just we're flexing our muscles of like cognition here. And it's great because people say the fantasy football can be stupid sometimes, or like fantasy community doesn't matter when it comes to football things just in general, but it's actually like, no, we actually can come up with some pretty cool things and some insights into things. And the fantasy football is a great resource for understanding the game better.
I feel like this is Jordan taking shots at the NerdBall Twitter account because we've just been tweeting camp videos being like, oh, sick crap by this guy. Are you drafting him at his ADP? We're having no.
Hey, no, those are just to get people excited for football. What I'm saying is people who would take, like, for example, me, take a George Pickens highlight reel catch and be like, see, wide receiver 1 for rookies, when I know that shouldn't be true.
Yeah. It's nice to add some perspective to training camp highlight reels, because I also like then learning what to look for that is a reputable or like a bona fide rep, right, in training camp highlight videos. Like you see something and you're like, okay, someone smart is like, well, that was against they were running this drill and that was against the second string corner, so of course they're gonna make this. Whereas sometimes they'll make a highlight reel play and you're like, no, that checked everything, like that was perfect coverage and well played and blah blah blah, and you're like, that is something you should take. And so it's like you're learning better to decipher and understand what you're being shown and what it actually means from a football standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of the fantasy community that is incredibly sharp. Like, Warren Sharp, I think, is a really good example of does a lot of work that even NFL teams look at. Matt Waldman and those guys, at least Waldman started as a fantasy football guy. And so, like you mentioned, Jordan, this is a way for people to get more interested in the sport than just trying to watch the game and, glean things from just watching it, really getting into the weeds with stats and things like that. But then there's also the group that, tweets at players that they're horrible people because they didn't score as much as they want. So if we can just bring up the average a little bit,
yes,
which I think that we do every year, I think we're on a good trajectory as a community.
Yeah. Please, weekly PSA. Don't be the person who tweets at a player who was on your fantasy team who didn't get you the fantasy points that you needed to win. Don't be that.
Or just be nice. Like, if you're going to tweet
right
at any person, just be nice.
Be nice. Seems like sound advice. What I love from this week, a friend of mine from college, shout out to Gil, he tweeted me, he plays in a fantasy league, which is, he calls it a creeper league, which is a redraft, but with keepers. And so I'm going to read the league's rules, because I think it's a very interesting way if you're looking for a way to spice up your fantasy life. Am I right, you guys? It can get a little mundane after playing too long with one group of people. You got to kind of spice things up. So spice. This is a way to do it. So the basics are, at the end of the season, you can choose up to keep a number of X players, and each for a penalty of X rounds. So if I keep one player, then you lose the pick in next year's draft 1 round closer to the first round than where that player was drafted. So if you choose to keep your 10th round pick, then you lose your 9th round pick the next year. If you keep 3 players and you keep, let's say, your players in round 4, 5, and 8, then each pick has a 3-round penalty. So you lose your players in rounds 1, 2, and 5. I don't want to go into excruciating detail, but they keep going down. Individual players can only be kept during 2 consecutive off seasons. This means that you can have a player on your team for 3 years. The year you draft him, the first year you keep him, the second year you keep him. If he goes back to the general draft, then he goes back to the general draft. If a player is added, this is about the waiver wire. If a player is added from the waiver wire at some point during the season for the purpose of this keeper system, we pretend that player was drafted in the 12th round or in the round he was actually drafted in if he was released from a team, and whichever is closer to the first round. And then trades and all this kinds of stuff. And he goes into the whole nitty gritty, which we don't need to get into here. But yep. I thought it was a really interesting, cool way of having the keeper system of Dynasty, in that like you really grow attached to your team, and it sucks to like have, drafted this team and then you're like, oh, I love all these players and now I have to start over again. But that's part of the redraft. Or for instance, like you draft, like last year, for instance, on one of my redraft leagues, I drafted T. Higgins because I was just like, I'm gonna take a flyer on T. Higgins. T. Higgins blows up. This way, I get to keep T. Higgins on my roster without necessarily having to pay the ADP that he's currently at, because I think I drafted him in like, the 7th round last year. So I would lose a 6th round pick as opposed to having to spend like a 5th or 4th on him this year, since that's kind of where he's been going. Anyways, shout out to Gil. I think it's a really cool fantasy take on a redraft to kind of give it a little more pizzazz and a little more spice. So I'm here for it.
Indeed. Any kind of odd rules, I think, make it more interesting, make you think a little bit harder than just following ADP. So,
yeah, it sounds like it's a good way to try to determine at the end of the season, like, who am I holding on to and who should I cut bait with? Is it too early to get rid of this guy, or should I hold on to him for one more year? What if he sucks? The only rule that I feel like I would have an issue with, it seems, is the you you assign the corresponding draft pick to somebody you pick up off of waivers if they were dropped. That would suck, because I feel like if you had somebody who maybe just had a bad year, or you pick somebody up who had an injury and you're hoping they come back, you're gambling a lot the next year if you decide to have them as a keeper. So but that's part of the game. I bet you it makes the choices much harder. So
part of the strat. So I'm here for it. I'm always, like Clark said, any kind of weird special rules, quirks that your league has makes the game much more fun. And that's what it's all about, as Clark reiterates to us on a regular basis. But we're done with love, you guys. It's done being positive, and it's time for the Boris Grishnikov hate of the week, because there's nothing we hate more than a Russian backstabbing hacker who tried to thwart James Bond in one of the better Bond movies, maybe of all time. One could say. Jordan, what'd you hate from this week, or just from this summer?
What I hate from this week, and this may sound a little weird coming from me, but I promise it's genuine, is I am really hating the amount of injuries that seems to be stacking up for the Bears wide receivers. We just got basically a notification saying I think David Moore went down. They've already lost N'Keal Harry, who they traded for. Byron Pringle has an injury. These guys weren't like sleepers or people who you were just going to dig on to your team from the waiver wire and expect to plug in and give you a million amazing points. The part that sucks about this and why I hate it is because we have a really talented second-year quarterback named Justin Fields, who is like, that roster is completely devoid of talent. Roquan Smith announced he wanted to trade today. He's like literally the best player on their roster right now, and he's like I'm done with this front office, and it's just, it kind of sucks because it makes me feel like, because this is the year that a second-year quarterback, or well, of course, a second-year quarterback, but this is the year where a quarterback after the rookie season is supposed to either show us who he is or be like, you know what, maybe he just doesn't have it. And I just feel like we're not going to be able to tell who Justin Fields is by the end of the season.
And we've seen it, like, this has become a trope, for lack of a better word, is that like teams will just go full hog into that second year for a quarterback. The Eagles are just doing it right now with Jalen Hurts. They went and traded for AJ Brown. We've seen countless times where teams get really aggressive in that second year. When Josh Allen's second year, right? That's when they traded for Stephon Diggs. Like, teams are like, let's go build an offense around this quarterback and see if this is the future of our franchise. And you're totally right. The Bears are just like, well, Allen Robinson kind of sucked for us last year, so we're going to let him go. Darnell Mooney, get ready to carry the offense. Darnell Mooney, who's going in the 7th round, you guys, and might be the only active person on the field who can catch footballs. It totally sucks because Justin Fields is not going to be able to show what Justin Fields can actually do on an NFL field for a while, despite the fact that they have a new coaching staff whom I have much more faith in than I did with Matt Nagy. Maybe they can flip Roquan Smith for a wide receiver. Let's, fingers crossed. Doubtful. I feel like player for player trades are very rare in the NFL. It's always for picks.
Yeah, they've made some like moves to try to help bring Justin Fields along, and so a lot of people are excited about Luke Getsy being the offensive coordinator, just because he's like, he had a job with Matt LaFleur, and maybe
he shared a donut with Matt LaFleur once. They had a bagel together.
The Shanahan tree and whatnot. But I will say that I think it's kind of telling that the Packers kept Adam Stenavich, their really awesome offensive line coach, and promoted him to offensive coordinator, than keeping Luke Getsy in-house to be OC. That's all I'll say about it.
It's Jordan just dropping that knowledge and then backing away. That's all I know. One of the things that I hate, and it's from this whole summer, I feel like the summer of Lamar hate has gotten well out of hand. And I know we've talked about it in this show, and we also, anyone who listens to us knows that we are staunch Lamar Jackson supporters. But it's just been, I guess there were really two key things that I feel like. First of all, on Get Up ESPN, they dropped their quarterback rankings from, according to league executives, coaches, scouts, and players. This was back in July, early July. Lamar Jackson, MVP Lamar Jackson, nowhere to be found in the top 10. No, you have Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, and Dak Prescott. No Lamar Jackson, nowhere to be found there. And then Madden drops their top 10 quarterbacks rankings for throw power. No Lamar Jackson there. No Lamar Jackson. In fact, you know who's got a stronger arm than Lamar Jackson, according to Madden? Sam Howell. Sure. Okay, Madden. Anyways, this is just, it's now become like, it's like the, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what meme or some joke. It's just becoming like, it's like a thing now to be like hate on Lamar because it's just dumb. It's just dumb. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Like, anyone would die to have Lamar Jackson on their team because what he brings to the offense is entirely unique. And guess what? He's pretty fucking good at throwing the football because he won a unanimous MVP and led the league in touchdowns. Like, you can't tell me this guy can't throw a football. So I am over Lamar hate. I won't let it bother me anymore. This is my one vent to get it all out. And then I am just going to be like, you know what? People are stupid. They don't want to love and respect Lamar, and that's their prerogative. I just know that I am right and they are wrong. And that's how we make decisions in this world.
Yep. ESPN is a Disney company run by Disney who just wants attention like Electronic Arts. So yeah, that's bad news.
I'll never drop this conversation. No, my biggest qualm with it is like I just have a real problem with Lamar Jackson winning an MVP and improving year over year. Fine, maybe now he's actually got like, I mean, everybody in the world knows how I feel about Rashad Bateman, but he's got Mark Andrews too, and like actual, they can actually do something on offense besides run the ball into your face 30 times a game. But my biggest issue is like we're already getting like Justin Herbert and Josh Allen and like these other guys who also haven't won an MVP. They haven't. I give props to Joe Burrow because he went to the Super Bowl, but like we're fitting these guys for their Hall of Fame jackets already, and it's like Lamar is in his fourth year now. He's got an MVP, but people, their last impression of Lamar is always their first one, and it seems to be like, oh, he can't win in the playoffs. And it's like, you know how hard it is to win in the playoffs? It's quite difficult, and you know how much of a team it takes to win in the playoffs. And did you know that Lamar Jackson's Baltimore Ravens last year were like the worst injured team in like a century of them actually being able to track this stuff? So it's all the other stuff that doesn't even have to do with Lamar's talent that I feel like is why it becomes such a big issue for me. Is like everybody should know that Lamar is talented, and I get that some people just can't see that, but it's the other stuff that's like it's counterintuitive to their own argument or their own like
you can't be
why
like,
they have an issue with it.
Right. You can't be like Lamar has to prove it or he's got so much to prove or whatever, and then be like Justin Herbert's a Hall of Famer. And it's like Justin Herbert's been great in the regular season, but we never seen him in the playoffs. I mean, if that's what you're using to like undermine Lamar Jackson, we've never seen Justin Herbert in the playoffs. So how are you comparing the two?
Justin Herbert's also had a really great quarterback coach his first few years in the league. Who's in Houston now? Can't wait.
David Mills.
I love that hire for her. I should have put that as my love, is like Pep Hamilton secretly
going to Houston to turn Davis Mills into a freaking legend and icon.
I think Davis Mills is good. Clark, I think Houston might actually have found at least a quarterback enough to get him through the next few drafts where they can build this roster up. He's good enough for that, I think.
So in my first dynasty league that was a super flex, I took Tom Brady and, just kind of punted on quarterback. And I have made some incredibly terrible trades trying to make up for that in this league. And I have finally learned this year to just be patient, like just wait. It's going to be okay. And one of the reasons it's going to be okay is I happened to pick Davis Mills in the 4th round because I thought this is a super flex and who else is going to play quarterback for the Texans? And that's turned out to be one of the luckiest dynasty picks I think I've ever made. Total luck. Nope. I was like, I don't even know who this is, but Matt Waldman said he was okay. So boop, boop.
And we're going to plug him in.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things. There's arguably no better feeling than when you're like in the final, second to last or final round of the rookie draft for a dynasty league. And you're like, I'm just throwing darts here. Like, I'll just pick this guy. And then you start seeing like reports being like, this person's making noise. This person's doing great. And you're like, oh, is he on my team? I don't have to worry about this. This is amazing. I'm a big fan of this.
A la Isaiah Pacheco so far in this.
Well, yeah, Isaiah Pacheco
offseason the past couple weeks.
Launched into. I knew
Who's
what I
was
going
to get into the Hall of Fame quicker, Isaiah Pacheco or Romeo Dubs.
So,
or Lamar Jackson.
Matt Waldman is a master of, he does the rookie scouting portfolio. You should definitely follow him on Twitter at Matt Waldman. So I drafted Pacheco on all of my teams because he was free and he was a 7th round pick out of Rutgers. So who would draft him? I woke up the other day to like 6 trade offers for Isaiah Pacheco. I was like, what happened? It's like someone on NFL Network said he was good. And everybody's like, I'll give you a 5th for him. You're like the kind of trade offers where they're like, this guy's not any good, but I'll take him on.
But I want him.
What? Why is okay?
It's like,
don't do that when you're trading. Don't do that.
Burning a roster spot.
Maybe they haven't noticed that he's been lighting it up at camp. Like
they're
actually,
Actually, no, I'll keep him.
They're like, look, you traded a first for Sam Darnold last year. Here, you need some help. Here you go.
You mean the Sam Darnold that the Panthers are currently shopping around and wondering why they don't have any takers?
This is why you shouldn't be desperate in your dynasty leagues, because you do things like trading a first for Sam Darnold. Just don't be like me. Just be patient.
I love it. Zamir White is the guy who I just kind of took a flyer on and has now been making some noise out of Las Vegas.
That's good dynasty advice. Draft a running back. Like if you don't know who to take, just pick some running back.
Especially a running back where you feel like if you're just like, I feel like there's uncertainty there. Like clearly the Raiders are not sold on Josh Jacobs. So yeah, take the rookie they just drafted, because Lord knows, who knows what's going to happen.
And if you hit 1 out of 10, you're good. Because it's not your first pick anyway. Dynasty talk later.
Guys like Zamir White, sometimes they're not always in the best position, because you see Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake and whoever else ahead of him on the depth chart there. But Zamir White's a very talented player, and he's very athletic, and he went to the University of Georgia, so there's some pedigree there. Sometimes these guys are just not in the right position, but because they're that freaking good, they rise to the top. So
yeah, that's how it is. Clark, we have to get you to be negative. What's your hate of the week?
I don't have any hate.
You son of a
It's
bitch.
too early. I'm excited that the season started. I don't think that this group has podcasted together probably in like 2 or 3 years. So I'm on cloud 9. I'm excited to start talking some ADP values. No hate yet over here.
Warms my heart. Always trust on Clark to warm our hearts. All right. Well, there we go. Let's move on to I want to see, dear listeners, I want you to see if you notice a little theme I have with my titling of these segments, because we're moving on to the Dwight Schrute fact of the week. And that fact is Rashad Penny last year averaged 19.1 half-point PPR points per game from week 13 onwards. The next closest was Devin Singletary, who averaged 16. 19.1 points he averaged per game from weeks 13 onwards. I know Rashaad Penny just went on an absolute tear, but that is still an impressive production that I don't know, Clark, do you feel like you have to take that in consideration when you're looking at drafting the Seahawks backfield this year?
So I believe that all information can be useful and should be taken in and measured. So this is really interesting. I'm glad you picked Rashaad Penny, because I think this is a great person to talk about, not only for how you should deal with Rashaad Penny, but how you should think about things. So Rashaad Penny had this incredible run last year against absolute poor opponents, right? Look at the teams where it's family show, trying to keep it clean. Look at the teams that he did this against, and it's not as impressive when you do that. Also, for Rashaad Penny's entire career, we've been waiting for him to be healthy and play games. However, he did put up those numbers. He did have those good games, and he is the RB1 that the Seahawks are going to ride to their 2-win season as long as he can hold up. And Rashaad Penny is going for nothing. I just picked him in the 11th round of this home league dynasty startup as my RB2, because I waited on RB. That's a good pick. Even if Rashaad Penny tweaks an ankle and then doesn't play until week 8, that was still a good pick in round 11. He's going so late, and he is the lead back for Seattle. Pete Carroll's not worried about who's good and pivoting and learning from his experience. It doesn't matter how good Walker is. It doesn't matter. It's going to be Rashaad Penny all the time. So, he's so cheap. You have to take him where he's going.
He's going currently on underdog ADP. He's going as the RB30, pick 92.
That's round 8. That's 7.
That is like pretty. He's going behind like Tony Pollard, who I know people are obsessed with, and we'll get into that. Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like I hate this. I tweeted this out, and we're going to touch on this too, because I'm going to talk about another person on the Seahawks later when we get into ADPs. But I like I'm kind of talking myself more and more into the Seahawks offense fantasy wise, and I don't like it. I don't want to have a lot of shares of the Seahawks, but their value is so diminished that it's hard not to want to do it. But I need not to do it. I need not to do it, you guys. So talk me out of it.
Well, to Clark's point before, Rashaad Penny did play from weeks 14 through 18, the 5 teams there: Houston, Rams, Bears, Lions, Cardinals. Guess which team he only scored 6.4 points against? It was the Los Angeles Rams.
Texans. I thought for sure it was that formidable Texans front.
Actually, the Texans might have been the ones that started this momentum train.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
One thing, I mean, this might be the center spot on the NerdBall bingo card of things we love is a player who had a great last month of the prior season. We absolutely love it here. I will say I saw I think it was a Seahawks beat reporter say something. This might have been an estimate too, but like Rashaad Penny's been handling like 92% of the first team snaps in training camp, and Ken Walker's got like 8. So that's great. But at the same time, you look at Rashaad Penny's snap shares from last year. During this run, it's like 57%, 42, 54, 64, 74. So they started to ramp him up. I'm just a little bit worried. I feel like Pete Carroll's a little bit unpredictable with these running backs sometimes, so it's a little bit tough to know whether or not like Kenneth, because they drafted him. Who knows if he's just going to take over? The good news is though they started doing the right things there. Drafting Charles Cross in the first round was a great start because they never seemed to prioritize offensive line, and it's good to see that.
Well, they do it as soon as they get rid of Russell Wilson.
I think if Rashaad Penny is healthy, I can't see drafting him behind guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Tony Pollard and a few of the other guys you named. I think the only one I would take ahead of him is maybe Josh Jacobs, but Josh Jacobs might not even be in Las Vegas. So, yeah, good value there.
I think you make a good point of, we talk about, do we like these guys or not? And we really need to put some context in there, because if you're looking for a running back in that part of your draft, I'm still hanging on hope for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think what I'm going to do a lot this year, because of Clyde Edwards-Helaire's price, I'm probably going to get him and Pacheco. And if it turns out to be the former Ronald, if it turns out to be Ronald Jones, okay, well, I took 2 shots at it and it didn't work out. But I mean, guys going in front of Rashaad Penny, at that ADP, I mean, a lot of wide receivers that are question marks. Alan Lazard.
He's going.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna get hyped on him.
Miles Sanders. I mean, like, talk about uncertainty. Miles Sanders is really athletic, but the Eagles do not like him. Like
he doesn't score. They don't want him to score touchdowns. They're like, no, the ball's not for you. You're not gonna score.
Penny's just so cheap. I mean, he's a value where he's going off the board.
He's going right, like I said, he's going as the RB30. And I guess to Jordan's point too, and to both of you guys' point, like, there are big question marks in terms of his health because he hasn't proven that he can really carry the weight of a full season. But like, if he plays 15 to 16 games this year, how does he not finish an RB2 or better? Right? Like I just don't see, outside of injury, I don't necessarily see how he doesn't outperform his ADP. Which to me is like, that's a draft. That's a good player to go get. So
yeah, and I think another way to look at it is, when Rashaad Penny is healthy and it's week 4, are you going to find a way to get him into your lineup?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to have a really good team to not start a running back who I think Pete Carroll is going to try to make a point that he was right. Yeah. So 15, 20 touches for any running back is probably going to at least sneak into a flex if your roster is very good, or probably be your RB2.
15, 20 touches, Clark. That is, in fact, exactly what our per ranking on nerdballff.com. Per ranking is a way we equalize fantasy points per game by equalizing the amount of work that every player has. And for running backs, it's equalized by 15 touches. So if every running back were to get 15 touches per game, what were they averaging from a fantasy standpoint per game basis? Rashaad Penny, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 10. He was tied for 10th last year with Jonathan Taylor in per ranking, which means if he gets 15 touches a game, he's averaging, last year he averaged 14.2 fantasy points per game with that kind of workload, which is, that is at the bare minimum RB2 production, if not top 15, maybe even RB1 production. So that's good stuff. All right, let's wrap up the show with our top 10 segment. Top 10 segment, obviously, we're just going to, given the week, we're going to find something that we want to rank. And this week, because drafts are around the corner, people are doing them, we're going to rank ADPs that we love. And by we mean me. So this is my top 10 ADPs that I love. And Jordan and Clark will rip it to shreds and tell me that I'm silly or foolish for all of them. Or in Clark's case, he'll praise me because Clark doesn't like negativity on this show, and I prey upon it. Before we get started, I want to give an honorable mention because I couldn't find a way to sneak him into my top 10. Give an honorable mention to Romantra Stevenson, who's going as the RB33, pick 97. And this is all underdog ADP. He has been running with the ones on occasion, and he's also looking to kind of take the James White passing role, possibly away from James White, who's still kind of recovering from the hip injury that he had last year. If that is the case, Romantra Stevenson, who already had a really strong rookie year, playing even with Damian Harris finishing as a fringe RB1 last year, might even have finished an RB1 last year due to touchdown
scored
production.
Like 15 touchdowns. He was good.
He was definitely an RB1.
Still undervalued.
So I want to give a shout out to Romantra Stevenson because I do think that if he gets work in that passing game, obviously for half point PPR or full point PPR, he's going to be very valuable there. However, the reason why he's an honorable, I'm not so sure this Patriots offense is going to be good.
Are we going to have a chance to talk about the Patriots offense? Or should we do that?
This is your chance right now.
Okay. Who's calling plays? Who's calling plays for the Patriots offense?
It's fucking Matt Patricia.
Where did Matt Patricia work last?
What are we doing here, Bill?
Yeah, it seems not good. There's reports from Patriots camp that's like, Mac Jones looked really good in year one, but now he looks confused and no one knows what to do.
And they're just like they had a whole bunch of like, what was it? They're just basically saying, they had multiple no one's open plays. We're just like Mac Jones like pats the ball because there's literally no one to throw the ball to, because guess what? Defensive coordinator Matt Patricia doesn't call good offensive plays.
Right.
Shocking.
What are we doing?
What are we doing, Bill? Yikes. Not a fan of that. All right, let's get into my top 10. We're going to start with number 10. Number 10, I have Dawson Knox. I had to include at least one tight end on this list. He is my tight end 9, or he is not mine. He is going as the tight end 9 at the middle of the 9th round. Now, I know that he had a high touchdown dependency last year, which is, something that you can't rely upon on 100%. However, for our advanced stats on NerdBall, he tied among tight ends in NEC, which is a consistency and efficiency rating, and he was the number 1 tight end in PER, which we already talked about. If he had played all 17 games last year, he missed 2, he would have finished the tight end 5. And I understand that like people are worried about mouths to feed, I guess, in Buffalo. However, I feel like people are really painting this Buffalo's offense to be extremely potent, so much so that they're really hyping up Gabe Davis as a wide receiver too, and rightfully so. I think Gabe Davis is going to do really well if he does get an increased workload. But we also have seen Dawson Knox get a really strong workload, and especially around the red zone and scoring touchdowns. So if you are not like I'm finding myself far more into Clark's camp of like, you're drafting one of the 3 top tight ends, or you're just like throwing the position in the trash. If you aren't going to do that, I do like Dawson Knox this year. I think that there is a chance that he again performs as a top 5 tight end. You're getting him in the middle of the 9th round. You're getting him as the tight end 9. I think that that's value.
I'm trying to debate mentally if I like this value. I think it would come down to me of whether or not I wanted to get a tight end just at that point in the draft.
At that place.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with Dawson Knox, I think, as a player. I think it might be a good rule of thumb to get a piece of the Bills offense just because they scored a lot of points last year, and they'll probably do that again. Dawson Knox, this is like, this is going to be the year, I think, that tells us if he is going to be a top 5 tight end, top 8 tight end in this league. He broke out in his third year exactly when he was supposed to. And he still even missed a couple games and performed pretty well. So if he keeps on going up on a upward trajectory, I mean, you could get a top 3 tight end here. Travis Kelce isn't getting any younger. Neither is Darren Waller, who has another major mouth to feed in Las Vegas. There are a few guys who George Kittle hasn't really been the number 1-2 tight end for a bit now. There's like a top 5 spot up for grabs that I think he could slide into. So,
and if he does it again, if he does it in consecutive years, he's going to. I mean, this is what everyone was saying last year about Kyle Pitts, right? Is that like this is the cheapest you're ever going to get Kyle Pitts in redraft, and I think he was like the tight end 5 or 6. I had him as the tight end 3, but let's not go into that. If Dawson Knox puts together another solid year where he does finish a top 5 tight end, you're never going to get him outside of the top 5 again. So I like that value.
Yeah, like Pete said, this is sure, maybe. There's like 14 tight ends that you're like, okay, maybe if they catch 7 touchdowns, then they'll be in the top 5. And Knox is on an incredibly explosive offense. But no, you draft Andrews, Kelce, Kittle, or Pitts, or you're punting the tight end position. The pivot you should take, that I believe, is Zach Ertz. If you're gonna wait, or if your plan falls to pieces, Ertz is going just a couple spots after Knox. But why do that? You can get Corduroy Patterson, you can get Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Isaiah Spiller, all these guys after Knox. Like I believe you should just make it your plan that you're going to get a premium tight end.
Yeah.
Knox, I mean, he's as good a bet as anyone if you miss out on those, but it's Dalton Schultz.
I'm not
Dallas Goedert. It's Mike Gesicki. I mean, like, yeah. I can tell the story for any of these guys, but it's a very top heavy position.
All right, let's move on to number 9. Number 9, I have Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 16, going at the end of the 3rd round. I mean, I don't feel like I need to elaborate too much on this. Cortland Sutton has easy wide receiver 1 potential, and he's not going as a wide receiver 1 right now. So there's value inherently there. I feel like his ADP will probably climb closer to wide receiver 1 status as we get further along into August, but maybe not. Maybe it'll sit right around here. He's a guy, end of the 3rd round, I would be more than happy to draft him as my wide receiver 1 and be using my first 2 rounds to, load up on running back or whatever strategy I want to employ. Or if he's my wide receiver 2, because I get one of the elite guys in the first 2 rounds, beyond ecstatic. So Cortland Sutton as wide receiver 16 seems like a sure bet to outperform that ADP.
Yeah, Sutton's a value to me. Should be going ahead of Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, Javonte Williams. I like Javonte Williams, but calm down. Like, yeah,
super calm down.
It's workload. It's not Javonte as the player. But I think Sutton's probably like wide receiver 12 or 13. The only receiver going after him that I would really like is maybe Jalen Waddle. But Sutton is going to be playing with Russell Wilson, and that tide is going to raise all boats. I think the question this offseason has been, is it going to be Sutton or Judy? And the answer is yes. Like, yeah. When they're going to be good, both of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as if you had to pick between Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf in Seattle, or Tyler Lockett and Golden Tate, or what other pairings did Russell Wilson have?
Anyone who has ever played with Russell Wilson, they have all outperformed expectations.
They're all good. So Cortland Sutton. And we've seen Cortland Sutton put up good numbers before, and now he has the best quarterback he's ever had in his career. Number 8, I have Corduroy Patterson. He's going as the RB 38 at the beginning of the 10th round. I understand that, like, you're adding Mariota, who is this running quarterback, and so that inherently takes something away. They drafted a running back in the 3rd round, I think. So, like, inherently that maybe takes away from it. Cornell Patterson was the RB9 last year. Only Eckler, Taylor, and Connor had a higher neck rating than him, which means only 3 running backs, and they're like the top 3 running back, one of the top 3 performers, were more consistent and more efficient than Cornell Patterson. I am fully on board with maybe this was a fluke year and Cornell Patterson comes back to some sort of earth, but the RB 38, is that really where we're thinking he's going to fall to after this in an offense that, like, seemingly now knows how to utilize him and get the most out of him. I don't know. Color me intrigued by him. In the 10th round, I'll draft him in the 9th round and be ecstatic with whatever he can give me. Because I'm surprised that he has taken such a fall from grace in terms of ADP from one year to the next.
I'm trying to look up like who would be around him at that point in the draft. Do you have a few names?
Here, let me bring some up for you. Underdog ADP. Let's find Corduroy Patterson.
So we've got like Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, other running backs like Rashaad White, Isaiah Spiller. We have second tier guys. The only guy close to him that I think I'm really excited about would be James Cook. With Patterson going so late and being used so well last year by the same coaching staff that's coming back, if you like other guys more, fine. But if you think Patterson's just not good, well, that's dumb. And you should. This is a 0 RB pick. If you went wide receiver, tight end, quarterback early, Patterson is how you limp by with an RB2 until you can, find James Robinson.
The 3 picks above Patterson: Melvin Gordon, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson. 3 picks below: Rondell Moore, Jalen Tolbert, and Kirk Cousins.
Okay, so none of those guys are running backs. I get, it depends on your draft strategy. I think Clark makes a pretty good point that like if you had been absent-minded about running back and you need one now, chances are that you are going to be able to just have your pick at this point in the draft because other people will probably have like gobbled up some pretty solid RB1s and RB2s by that point. I think just from my own personal preference at this point in the draft, I might either grab my QB if I didn't already, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins sitting right there.
Yeah.
I still like Melvin Gordon in Denver. And I might like, if there's like a Ken Walker though, or like a James Cook, I heard those names mentioned, I would probably want to take a flyer on them instead, just for upside purposes.
James Cook, especially. I like James Cook a lot this year. It's just, I just would like someone who's maybe more well-versed in this than to explain to me what is going on in people's thinking as to this, such a precipitous fall for Corduroy Patterson.
He's been a tease for his entire career and had one pretty good year.
And that's
the argument against it. And that's a good argument.
It's fair. I think I would obviously feel so much colder on him if he had changed teams or the Falcons had changed their coaching staff. Anyway.
Also, unless Drake London comes out the gate like Justin Jefferson it all over the place, I think they're going to see like 8 people in the box at all times if Kyle Pitts is lined up in line.
But maybe they also just bounce him out to play in the slot more. And
that's true too. Use him as
a wide receiver.
You don't have.
Yeah.
I guess I would attribute it to being like, hey, this 31-year-old guy who switched positions had a good year because they had no other options.
Which is totally fair. I feel like they still don't have any other options, but you're totally right. That like people are banking on it being a one-hit wonder, which I'm totally on board with. I just don't necessarily know if he's going to fall all the way to RB38. Moving on. Number 7, my first quarterback on the list, Tua Tagovailoa, QB 17, going at the beginning of the 12th round. I want to give a shout out to Michelle Madzik from Ball Blastem, who tweeted this out, and I'll read this tweet verbatim. Alex Smith, in his one and only career season with Tyreek Hill as a starter, led the NFL in deep completion percentage, passing yards, touchdown, and passer rating, had a career high 4,042 passing yards and 26 touchdowns, and finished as QB4 in fantasy football. I bring this up because guess who Tua just got this offseason? The Dolphins offense is like going to be potent. Everyone is expecting this offense to be extremely potent. They think that Tyreek Hill is going to feast. They think that Jalen Waddle is going to feast. Some people think Mike Gesicki is going to feast. Like, if you think that these wide receivers, if you think Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are both wide receiver 2 or better, top 24 fantasy picks, who's throwing them the football? It's Tua. So, like, it seems to me that Tua at QB 17, like if I'm sitting on quarterback, if I'm waiting, he is a guy who I'm certainly looking to kind of see if I can get because of the fact that he seems to have a legit upside because of the talent that's around him. And because we've seen it before with quarterbacks, a la Alex Smith, you get someone as explosive as Tyreek Hill who can take any pass to the house with his speed. That looks great on the quarterback stat sheet. Easy scores, easy points there.
Yeah, I'm with you. In one QB leagues, this doesn't matter because I think Tua is kind of outside of.
Yes.
I think that he's going to be good. One of the stands you're going to have to take this offseason is: do you think the Dolphins' offense is going to be good with Mike McDaniel, with Tua being healthy, with the Dolphins perhaps trying to win games? Per Brian Flores, not always the case there.
Yeah,
and I think he is good, and I think that they are going to be good. I believe in Mike McDaniel. He from the Shanahan school, he knows how to absolutely kill it in the press conference. And I know that doesn't always translate to wins on the field, but young coach who looks like he's hungry to learn, use analytics to his advantage. And we had Jalen Waddle with a breakout season as a rookie, finished as the wide receiver 12, but outside of that, just looked like absolutely amazing. You bring Tyreek Hill to the team. They've tried to bolster the offensive line. And again, now they have an offensive coordinator / coach who cares about the offense and wants Tua to be the quarterback. If everything else fails at quarterback, or if you're in a 2 QB league, then Tua is a fine second quarterback to take.
Yeah. If you're in super flex league, I mean, he's going to be a top target for me this year for sure. Moving on to number 6, Jordan. I got a few for you, but we're going to start it off. Aaron Jones, baby, going as the RB10, 204. I like this pick because of the fact that I can get someone who has the potential to be the RB1 this year, not having to spend a top 5 pick on him. In the last 3 years, he was the RB3 without Devonte Adams in the lineup over 8 games, and he was the RB15 with him in the lineup. Well, lots of people have talked about this, but the splits with and without Devonte Adams are noticeable, especially in the passing game. Aaron Jones is going to get funneled a lot more work in the passing game. He's going to be a lot more involved in the offense in general. I think this backfield is going to be shared between him and AJ Dillon, but there's going to be lots of work to have in Green Bay. Aaron Jones going as at the beginning of the second round, I can get myself a Justin Jefferson or a running back who maybe has fallen down to me, and then pair him with Aaron Jones as either my RB2, or happy to have Aaron Jones as my RB1, because I do think that he possesses the potential to be the RB1 this year, especially in half point or full point PPR.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, a lot of the disparity from points when Devonte Adams is on the field versus off is because Devonte Adams is just a sick red zone target. So like those goal line carries were either just not there for Aaron Jones, or they went for the easy points, which was a quick slant to Devonte Adams in the end zone, which is a handoff basically from Aaron Rodgers at that point. But Aaron Jones has finished the past 3 years as in PPR as the RB10, 5, and 2. I fully believe he's going to be the top 5 for running backs this year. And I think you're going to see a lot of 2-back sets and a lot of fun stuff from Aaron Jones. I think he's going to line up in a lot of different places and a lot of fun places, and they're going to use just don't be afraid of AJ Dillon.
Yes,
you're not going to be afraid of Kareem Hunt or Dearness Johnson taking away from Nick Chubb, because Nick Chubb is just that good. You're not going to be afraid of, or you shouldn't be afraid of Tony Pollard siphoning all that much away from Ezekiel Elliott, even though Ezekiel Elliott's a little bit older now. I still think Aaron Jones is just that talented, and there's going to be that opportunity. They're going to run they have big wide receivers. They don't have very talented wide receivers, but they're big, and they're going to put their hands on defensive backs, and they're going to run the hell out of the football. So Aaron Jones, top 5 running back this year, top 3. I'll go top 3.
Love it. I have him ranked as my RB3 this year. And if I get him as my RB10, thank you. Round of applause for me. All right, let's move on to number 5. We're in the top 5 now. These are the elites of the elites ADPs that I'm loving this year. Chase Edmonds. Speaking of the Dolphins offense, RB29 going in the middle of the 8th round. This is, again, if you are going into that 0 RB or really waiting on a running back strategy. He has 30-year-old Raheem Mostert to battle with and Sony Michel. I will give the edge to the person who they brought into this offseason, paid a buttload of money to, can work out of the passing game, and is now in an extremely, what we all expect to be an explosive offense. Chase Edmonds is, again, a guy who you're getting well outside of RB2 range, who I think could almost certainly finish in RB2, assuming that he is going to be that guy in Miami. And to me, all the typical markers in terms of contract, in terms of depth around him, in terms of a team's commitment to a player, all point to Chase Edmonds being the RB1 in Miami in an offense that we're all very excited about. And that to me means points. And so Chase Edmonds in the middle of the 8th round seems like value that I am happy to kind of get on board with.
If Chase Edmonds was better and Sony Michel wasn't on the roster, I would agree with you completely.
That's fair. He is going 1 pick ahead of Rashad Penny. And we just did spend a couple minutes talking about how Rashad Penny is maybe worth the pick this year. So outside of that, though, he's going around TJ Hawkinson, Chris Olave, Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Are those necessarily guys you're much more excited about? Clark clearly is not taking TJ Hawkinson.
Sony Michel's the man this year. I'm calling that as my.
Ooh.
He is going to be the Dolphins' lead back. He's the only person who's managed to lead a backfield for any period of time ever in his NFL career. It's a grab bag.
All right.
I called Corduroy Patterson last year.
You did.
I'm calling Sony Michel this year.
If I'm on the clock at that position and it's between Rashad Penny and Chase Edmonds, I'm smashing the Rashad Penny button.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really hesitating on it.
Yeah. Maybe Chase Edmonds gets demoted to my 8th top ATP.
Don't let us bully you, Pete.
I'm sorry. He's number 5. Don't try to change my mind. Let's move on. Number 4. I have another quarterback here. He was a QB1 in per last year, averaging 18 points per game, and second only to Jalen Hurts in neck during his starts, meaning he was extremely efficient, extremely consistent. He's going as the QB 19, 13th round, at the end of the 13th round. And that's my boy, Jameis Winston. I can't quit my Jameis. He looked very good from a fantasy perspective in his starts last year for the Saints before he got injured. I know he's coming back from an ACL, and I know there's lots of question marks there. However, you got a healthy Michael Thomas, and all signs are pointing to that. You've got Chris Olave. You've added more talent to that passing team and that passing core. Still a good offense. I know Sean Payton's no longer there, but that system is still going to be more or less implemented. They're not going to make drastic changes. He is a guy who I think he's the most boomer bust player, certainly on this list, in my opinion, but his boom is he could be a top 5 quarterback. And we've seen him do that even while throwing 40 interceptions. So the bread is in the crumble, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, like Tua, I think this doesn't matter unless you're in a 2 QB league. Also, like Tua, I think that Winston's going to give us plenty to support, Kamara, Olave, Michael Thomas, and that could squeak him into the quarterback 9, 10, 11. But if you're just in a 1 quarterback league, these guys, I don't think they matter too much. He's a value.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely.
I should have stressed with all these quarterbacks. I'm thinking this is for super flex, because if you're in a 1 QB league, I don't feel like there's many quarterbacks outside of what is going as top 12 in ADP that you're going to feel super confident in taking as your QB1.
Yeah, but just to make sure we're clear here, if you draft and all of a sudden you look up and it's the 13th round,
yes,
you're fine still. Because there's Tua and there's Jameis, and those guys are going to be totally fine spot starters.
I feel like Jameis is he would be my quarterback after I've already taken a quarterback. Like he's the calculated backup that could very well end up being the starter just by the end of it all. This is all projection. Everything we're doing right now is projection, but I feel like the Saints pass catchers right now is projecting like they have to be at a certain place that only in our mind exists right now. Like we don't know if Michael Thomas hasn't played football in 18 months. Like we don't know if Chris Olave is a rookie. He might be good. We don't know that if he's good once he gets on an NFL field. Adam Troutman been kind of underwhelming. He's been one of my guys. I'm still holding out hope for him. And Jarvis Landry is a 29, 30-year-old wide receiver whose game has never been speed and getting away from guys. It's been craftiness and just being able to separate by being very crisp with his routes. But is that limited athleticism still there for Jarvis? I'd like to think so, but I don't know. Jameis's reputation hasn't always been pinpoint accurate passes to the agile and swift wide receiver. It's the big targets and the guys who can just run under a football going long. So we'll see. That's all I'm saying is it's a lot of projection. I still like Jameis though, as a potential just league winner, maybe.
Yeah, that's why he's number 4 for me, because the potential is there. All right, now we get into number 3 is a tie between 2 potential league winners, in my opinion. And it is the aforementioned, and I have them as tied because they're basically at the exact same pick. Alan Lazard going wide receiver 38 in the beginning of the 7th round. And then Brandon Nyuk is going 1 pick after him, also at the beginning of the 7th round. Both of these guys, I have written about Alan Lazard. So there's not too much you need to know. We know I love him. His wide receiver 2 in per rating, top 12 in neck rating last year. There's a huge vacated target share that was left when Devonte Adams has left. All Aaron Rodgers has done this offseason is hype up Alan Lazard. Alan Lazard was a very productive receiver last year for him. And I think that Aaron Rodgers has proven to be a guy who doesn't necessarily turn to rookie wide receivers. And even if he does, they're not uber productive. He likes to have he's a Tom Brady-esque, likes to have a very committed relationship with a wide receiver before moving forward. And I think Alan Lazard has been taking steps, and I know that Nick would be the first to tell me, well, he's past his breakout year, which is true. But who never says you can't break out in your 4th year? I never say that. That's for dang. Or actually, it's 5th year, I think. Maybe even later. But anywho's, Alan Lazard, I'm in. Brandon Nyuk is another guy who I know a lot of people were in on last year, and he kind of was a disappointment. However, from weeks 10 to 18 last year, he was the wide receiver 16 in half-point PPR. He was the wide receiver 7 in per rating last year. And everything that's come out of training camp has been the fact that Trey Lance, who is the starting quarterback for the 49ers now, Trey Lance and Brandon Nyuk had a connection already going into camp, and that connection has only grown and shown itself and flashed even more. And in fact, when I wrote this list last week, Brandon Nyuk was the wide receiver 42, and he has already gained multiple spots in ADP because of all these reports coming out. So his ADP is probably going to only continue to climb. Both of these guys, I think, are receivers who you can draft very late, ostensibly, in the 7th round, whom have real potential at finishing wide receiver 2s and even maybe approaching wide receiver 1 territory. There are shots that I feel very confident in taking because at this point in the 7th round, at least in my draft strategy, I will have built up my wide receiver room where if they are busts, I can handle that because I've got enough wide receivers there to carry the load.
I'm not going to say I wasn't one of these people because I definitely was, but I think a lot of people got their feelings hurt last year when Brandon Ayuk just couldn't get out of the doghouse, and now he's like being penalized for that. It seems by his ADP, nobody wants to like have a piece of it, but Brandon Ayuk is one of those guys this year that I'm going to make sure to have on as many redraft leagues as I do. Like he's going to be one of those guys I target. Alan Lazard, you were right. This is his 5th year. as a pro, but his first year in the league was all practice squad, so it's like his fourth on the roster. Packer wide receivers can break out late. Devonte Adams is one of those guys. I'm not saying he's Devonte Adams. Everybody, please stop doing that. But to bring it back,
Aaron
to what
Rodgers is saying he's
before,
Devonte Adams. Aaron Rodgers says it's really easy to go from one Hall of Fame receiver to another.
Yeah. But like I said before, the Packers are going to run probably a lot of heavy 22 sets, and they have big wide receivers. Allen Lazard is a 6'5", 227-pound guy. He's just going to be on the field. So, like, the play doesn't have to end as a running play if that's what's initially called. So as long as he's on the field for 100% of these wide receiver snaps, which it seems like he's going to unless he gets injured, then that's another guy who, just by virtue of being there, can be a wide receiver 2 for you at least.
Yeah, both these guys are good shots to take. A lot of people are going to pound on their chest and say they were right about this one way or the other. All the information for Allen Lazard to be a breakout is there. All the information of Allen Lazard continuing to be what Allen Lazard has been is there. This is a good dart to throw. The Packers are going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, you can't lose all faith in the Packers offense because that's what happened. Speaking of losing all faith in an offense because of something that happened this offseason, my number 2 ADP that I am in love with this year, and I just kind of talked myself into it today, and I tweeted about it, and I want to talk myself out of it, but DK Metcalf is going as the wide receiver 26 at the middle of the 5th round.
That sounds about right.
Does it, though? I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen him. Geno Smith was the starting quarterback for weeks 5 and 8 last year. And DK Metcalf during that time was the wide receiver 4. I'm not saying that he's going to continue to produce that level. He had like 5 touchdowns and whatever, for 400 yards or something like that during that time frame. But I think it does prove that DK Metcalf might be a little bit quarterback proof. And especially if Geno Smith, whom the signs are pointing, I've never been so excited for Geno Smith to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But maybe there's something there between Geno and DK. And it just seems to me that this is, there's a real chance that DK Metcalf is a complete, absolute bust, and the Seahawks are just awful. And you've spent a 5th round pick on a wide receiver who's going to basically, do nothing for you. And that's hard to recover from. But it's also like this guy has proven he's a freak athlete who's proven to be one of the better receivers in the league since he's entered. And you're getting him as a wide receiver 26. You're getting him in the 5th round. That value is hard for me to say no to. But talk me out of it, you guys.
I don't know if I can.
Yes!
The thing about it is, like, this is completely underrated. I feel like we never talked about it as much when it was happening and appreciated it when it was happening. But the connection between Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett was like a very special connection. Like, they would make like a ton of ridiculous plays. And of course, there was a lot on Russell Wilson just being able to put the ball on the moon and have it drop wherever he wants. But Tyler Lockett was like always in a great position, always making ridiculous catches. And it was because of that connection that I think maybe DK benefits from somebody who doesn't have that sort of connection. He can get in there first and be like, hey man, let's build this connection, you and me. Like, Tyler Lockett's good, but he had the last quarterback. Let me get buddies with this guy. And maybe that's all it takes. Maybe there's a little Ewing theory going on here for DK.
I'm always a fan of Ewing theory.
Metcalf is an absolute baller. And if anyone can overcome what is going to be the horrible Seattle offense, it's him. But I'll take Adam Thielen, who's going around later to score more fantasy points this year.
All right. Saucy indeed. All right.
Kirk Cousins is a heck of a lot better back than anything Seattle has. That's not bold.
That's not bold.
Fair enough. Yes.
that is a very fair statement, Clark. All right. My number 1 ADP that I am in love with this year, and he will be on every single one of my teams if he stays at this level, Jordan alluded to him earlier in the show. Don't be afraid of the big bad Tony Pollard, because Ezekiel Elliott has proven every single goddamn year that he has been in the NFL, he will finish a RB1. He finished RB2, RB9, RB5, RB4, RB11, and last year he was the RB6. Every year Ezekiel Elliott has been in the league, he has finished an RB1. The Dallas Cowboys signed him to a bajillion-dollar contract. Jerry Jones is going to make sure that this guy gets 20 touches per game, regardless of what the analytics show Tony Pollard should be getting. He is going in the 4th round, the RB17. He is going in the 4th round. I will assure you people, if I can draft a elite running back in round 1, 2 elite wide receivers or a tight end in rounds 2 and 3, and then get Ezekiel Elliott as my RB2, I will leave every draft absolutely ecstatic. I understand wanting to maybe downgrade him a little bit because of Tony Pollard, or because of what the analytics show, or because of what people who are thinking outside of the NFL box are saying. But sometimes you have to step back into the NFL box, close the lid, go back like 3 decades, and remind yourself that Jerry Jones is the person who makes the calls on this team. Mike McCarthy is the head coach of this team. This team is not going to suddenly abandon their billion-dollar running back because he's a little too old or because Tony Pollard is more efficient. Ezekiel Elliott is going to finish a running back 1 this year in every league that you play in, and you can get him. It's like a mid-tier RB2. It blows my mind. Favorite ADP of the year so far. 100% will be drafting Ezekiel Elliott in all of my leagues if I can continue getting him in the 4th round. Please and thank you.
You're absolutely right. And I would take him in the 3rd everywhere.
Yes. What are we doing?
If my friends let me get Ezekiel Elliott in the 4th round, I'm not one to gloat during the draft because too much anxiety for that. I'm always too afraid I'm going to get bit in the butt. This is a move where I don't think I'm going to get bit in the ass. So I will call each of them individually and celebrate on the phone with them if they let this happen. Just because, like, Zeke Elliott, he has a lot of mileage. Yes. He has a lot of carries in his career. Yes. But Jerry Jones is just telling us straight up year after year that Ezekiel Elliott is a big part of this football team. And I'm going to keep on like believing that until he says otherwise, or Zeke's only 27. Okay. We got to stop putting all of our running backs out to pasture too early. I think, especially now with the way athletes can recover and things like that, I think the peak for running backs might not be 25. Maybe it could be pushed to 27, 28. So now I'm rambling about something completely different. In on Zeke.
Yeah, it boggles my mind that you can get him this cheap, and I'm pretty confident that not enough people will listen to this show such that his ADP will rise. So feeling pretty safe that he's going to be, again, like you said, Clark, I would take him in the 3rd round.
Hey, we move markets. What are you talking about?
Well, now we know. We'll track Ezekiel Elliott's ADP, and if it climbs even a smidge, that's on us. We did that.
This is, we talked about the fantasy community and some things that they do. Tony Pollard is the fantasy community getting too cute.
Yes.
Everyone is telling us what's going to happen, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, like, anyone can get injured, so we'll just, but
if Ezekiel Elliott misses any time, Tony Pollard is an RB1, hands down. Yeah. And you can't, the thing is you can't be like Tony Pollard is an RB1 if he takes Ezekiel Elliott's role and then be like, but Ezekiel Elliott in his role isn't an RB1.
Right.
He's Tony Pollard right now is the patron saint of the fantasy community that always wants somebody else to get out of the way. Like, he is that guy. Like, Miles Sanders was that guy for a while, and there's a bunch of other ones.
There's always that backup running back who's like shown like hyper efficiency and whatever in their touches, and the fantasy community is like free so-and-so. And you're like, yes, if only this guy was, got a workload back. And the thing is, Tony Pollard was hyper efficient last year. And if he does get, and reports of camp are saying that he's going to be more involved in the passing game, he's going to see a larger role. He is well worth drafting in fantasy this year because he is going to see an increased role. However, is he worth, what is he currently going as? Tony Pollard going as the RB26.
Yeah. Everything I'm saying is not an anti-Tony Pollard as a player take.
Right.
It is, we're
a little too excited.
It's like a condo being on sale in San Francisco for like $3 million. It's like, I'm sure that condo's nice, guys, but that's not like, we have made this ridiculous claim. Tony Pollard is being drafted like he is an RB1 when the person who owns the team and is known to meddle in the team and who hired a coach who will allow him to do whatever he wants is telling us it's going to be Zeke.
Yes.
It's going
to be Zeke.
To throw some more like cold water on it, just to tell yourself in any sort of situation, is you got to think of the other team's defense, right? During the week, who are they preparing for on the Cowboys? It's Dak, it's Ezekiel Elliott, it's CeeDee Lamb. Tony Pollard might be fourth. Dalton Schultz could be fourth, and Tony Pollard could be fifth. But when you're that far down on the pecking order, you're not like a big priority to the defensive game plan. They'll definitely keep an eye out for you. But if Tony Pollard moves up higher on that list, is he still going to be as effective when people are just, when he's 50% of the game plan, 40% of the game plan? Who's to say?
Who's to say? Who's to say? All right. Oh my goodness, guys. It feels so good to be back. So good to be talking about football. So good to be talking about football with you guys. And it's so good to be talking about football with you guys and you, dear listeners, tuning in. So that's all we got for you this week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Pete M. Rodgers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And of course, make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out over on the site at nerdballff.com, including our 2022 NFL NerdBall Fantasy Football Draft Guide, which you can get your copy today. Only $10, or if you're a Patreon subscriber, it is free. So make sure you go get that and win your NFL fantasy drafts. Until next week, my fellow nerds.
Sweet.